Hello and welcome to this little exploration of the M1 versus the iPad Air 4 and the ancient dinosaur that is the 2015 MacBook Pro. Right, let's have a look. So this is a bit of a diversion for me. I have access to this wonderful 2020 M1. It's a 2TB 16GB version, so top spec, really fast hard drive, and the capacity to do the work that I need to do without messing around with external drives too much. So I thought I'd do a little bit of an experiment, a little bit of a test with one of the aspects of my own personal workflow. I don't like to throw away anything. I don't like to destroy data if I can help it. So after I finish with a project, I like to keep all my original files, but I don't necessarily keep them in the quality that they were filmed at, because you know, even a small project, you can have 150, 200 gigabytes of footage that you filmed, even on an iPhone or a camcorder, or if it's a production camera, we're talking terabytes for a day's footage. What I like to do normally is I like to bring that down to the minimum HD, just for archiving purposes. You can't really use that footage for anything more than very basic social media posts, where the resolution isn't really that important, but you know, you can't really use it again, but it is useful to have that information there. So I usually have it at 480. I know that's an incredibly small video size, but this is just something that I've gotten used to doing because I don't like to destroy data. So what I do is I normally use Handbrake, which is fine, but it can cook the laptop. So I thought, let me just see if I can do the same kind of process, because Handbrake's very handy to bring it the actual video size as close to YouTube as possible. So it's actually really quite a powerful little tool. So what we have here is a time lapse of the 2015 MacBook Pro as it's punching through a 12 gigabyte 1 hour 50-minute film, which is HD. And as you can see, the frame rates are ever so slightly inconsistent, and it finishes it within 40 minutes. And that's about the kind of thing I'd expect the 2015 MacBook Pro to do. The final file size was 948 megabytes, which is down from a 12 gig original file. So that's the kind of thing that you really want to have. You want to make sure that it's still watchable, but its file size is greatly reduced. So for the second test, I chose to use the Lumifusion app on the iPad Air. So I set it up as close as I could to the original settings within Handbrake, and I fired it off, and I've sped the film up. So this finished in a reasonable time. The final data is 1.82 gigabytes. The file size was not 1.8, I think it was 1.3 gigabytes estimated. So it ended up being 1.8 gigabytes, which is twice the amount that Handbrake kicked out at 900 and something. So for this test, we're going to use the M1 with Handbrake, and the recording isn't absolutely great, to be honest. For some reason, the focus of the camera was off. Probably trying to focus on my face in the reflection. So the screen isn't terribly well focused. Handbrake doesn't use the GPU. It's supposed to. I had it set to Video Toolbox, which is supposed to use the GPU, but it doesn't. So it's completely maxed out on the CPU, as you can see, but the GPU isn't being used, so that's why it took roughly 3 minutes longer than an iPad Air. Okay, so that's fair enough. In terms of getting large files and squashing them down. With an Intel-based MacBook Pro, there was no real GPU, so Handbrake was fine because the CPU was just maxed out and you just left it for however many hours, depending on how much stuff you had to do. So it's fine. Handbrake and the M1 chip, it doesn't really work at the moment. So let's move on to the second, third, fourth test.
How many tests have I got?
This is the test with the M1 laptop, but with Lumifusion. Amazing. Obviously, because of the way that the M1 works, it works with iPad apps. So let's see how well Lumifusion does on the M1. On the iPad Air, it was 8 minutes and 30 seconds roughly. Let's see how it does. So I set it up, 480, I think 2 megabits per second. And let's just see, it will speed the film up. And I wouldn't use Lumifusion on the MacBook Pro because I've got Final Cut. So why would you? But it's handy to have as a second editing station, and it comes in at 5 minutes and 30 seconds. So this is a 12 gigabyte file, which if I just pause that and go straight to the yeah, actually I think I lost it, to be honest. It's another annoying thing. I did save it to the desktop, so I'm pretty sure I did, and then it just didn't arrive, you know, and there was nothing happening. I was quite confused, but that could just be a little bit of a developer issue. It's always developers, isn't it? Goodness me. Stop drinking coffee and do Pilates, I say. So I can't tell you what the file size would be, but okay. It's taken sort of 5, 6, 8, so it's taken 3 minutes off and exporting. So actually very handy, and that makes sense because of the GPU cores, the increase in GPU cores. So let's look at the final test. So let's look at the Final Cut on the M1. Let's look at how it takes a 12 gig file and brings it down to 921, which is roughly the same size as the MacBook Pro 2015. Got it to around about 900 megabytes as well. So very good. Let's see how fast it goes. So it comes in at 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So let's have a look at the details of all the tests put together. Okay, so the results are in. I passed the M1 with Lumifusion. I passed that whole project through, and this time it did save it. And I just finished now. And it came in at exactly the same size as the iPad Lumifusion export, okay? But it did it in 5 minutes and 45 seconds. So this is the issue. What do you want? Do you want size, which is the whole point of this, is to reduce the file size of large video files? Or do you want speed? Because you can't have both. The smallest is an amazing 459 megabytes, but that was with the M1 in Handbrake, and it took 13 minutes. On the other side of that scale is 5 minutes and 30 seconds with the Lumifusion on M1. 5 minutes and 45 seconds at 1.89 gigabytes. So what is that? 3 times the size? And the difference in time is nearly 3 times as long, or as 3 times as quick. But so the whole point is to get the file sizes down at a reasonable time. So I think a good difference, a good balance to this is 920 megabytes for 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And that was with the M1 with Final Cut Pro, which is actually exactly the same as what was happening back in, what was it, 2015 when I was responsible for archiving vast amounts of information that were recorded over weekends. I'd capture at least a terabyte or a terabyte and a half, and all of this footage had to be saved in reasonable HD for legal purposes. And I used my iMac. It was an i5 iMac, and that was what I was using. I was using Final Cut Pro to do the whole thing, because Handbrake just used to burn out the processor. I felt I was cooking sausages on my iMac. So there you go. That is the end of a morning's worth of work. The best opportunity to get file sizes down to a reasonable size and not spend all day is the M1 with Final Cut Pro. I thought, oh, of course, I'm going to put against Resolve, DaVinci Resolve. Let's see if it can do it any faster as well now that I have the M1. But I thought Lumifusion did a very, very good job, but file sizes were too high. I don't really get that because it was set at 2 megabits per second. So that's interesting. Final Cut, it really is the best, absolutely superb piece of software. So let's see how it does with DaVinci Resolve, because of course they updated just recently on version 18. And let's just see just how they compare in the next video. Oh, and before you go, I'm going to be reviewing, because I've had lots of new toys, I'm going to be reviewing the F2, the Zoom F2 with the 32-bit float, which I've played around with, and just, oh, it's incredible, this piece of technology. An absolute blessing to have a 32-bit float in something that small. Very, very powerful indeed. So thanks for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, share, and send money. God bless.